buying any asset, regardless of whether it's Bitcoin or a stock, and being able to remove the emotions from that decision-making process is really beneficial, I think, towards the long term. Quality of life is directly correlated with annual kilowatt-hour consumption per capita, right? So the wealthiest, most prosperous, best places to live in the world all have the highest annual kilowatt-hour consumption per capita. Certainly, if the price of Bitcoin were to double tomorrow, the revenue that you're going to be producing is going to be twice as much, essentially, while still maintaining that fixed cost of electricity. I think it'll be a good opportunity for the long-term private miners and companies who can operate efficiently, which I think energy consumption can kind of have a negative connotation. However, we need more energy consumption. We need more energy production.
Hi, Adam. How are you doing? Everything fine on your end?
Good. Yeah. Nice day here in Iowa. So, can't complain too much for springtime in Iowa. How's it going today? Thanks for having me on.
So great to have you on. For the people that don't know, maybe let's get started with who are you and why are you into Bitcoin?
Yeah, I'm Adam Haynes, the founder and CEO of Simple Mining. Why am I into Bitcoin is maybe a little bit of a long story, but started the company 4 years ago. It was really born out of my first business, which is a retail cell phone repair business. Started that basically a year out of college. I dropped out and then opened my phone repair business and was expanding the cell phone repair business. And then during COVID, we kind of put our expansion plans on pause. And one of our employees was mining Bitcoin, and we started dabbling, doing some of the micro-soldering repairs on some of the machines. I had heard of Bitcoin at that point in time, but never done, taking the time to do the research to really fully understand it. So kind of went down the rabbit hole, Bitcoin standard and all of that good stuff, and was very quickly orange pilled, right? And thought, what is a good way that I can accumulate more Bitcoin? And started exploring the mining. We were doing that in the back of one of our cell phone repair stores here in Iowa. It's a really good place to do this business. Iowa actually leads the country in wind power production from a percentage standpoint. So about 2/3 of the energy here in Iowa is renewable wind energy. So not a lot going on in Iowa besides cornfields and windmills, but it's a good place to mine Bitcoin. So started doing it a little bit in the back of our phone repair stores, and kind of explored some ways to do this at more of an industrial scale. Had some conversations with our local utility company. One thing led to another, and we started with 50 machines running down at our first facility in 2021, and we've continued to kind of scale and grow since that point in time. So now we have over 20,000 machines operating, over 60 megawatts across 7 different facilities in Iowa. And really our focus point is on offering a great hosted solution for machines and doing the repair services as well.
That went quick from I run 1 or 2 machines in the back of the store to I have 20,000 machines up and running.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. We saw an opportunity when we first started the company to come in and take all the principles that made us successful in the cell phone repair business and apply those to this industry, right? So it's very critical in this industry to make sure your machines have a high uptime, right? If your machine's not online, it's not producing any Bitcoin. So we've been very fortunate. We have a really great team. A lot of this is all the success I can point to a lot of our members on our team that have been really great at growing the business and building out the different things that we have to operate and execute at an extremely high level. First started the company. Our CTO, Lucas, actually came over from the cell phone repair stores. He's an absolute wizard. And from the very beginning, we noticed how critical that was in order to keep machines online, right? And he's been paramount in building out our back end systems and processes and automations to ensure that we have a really high uptime with all of the equipment.
So it's about It's about the what did excite you about Bitcoin mining? Was it the electrical aspect that you could mine magic internet money over electricity, and or is it the thing that you can get additional return of investment on top of your Bitcoin or build a business around that?
Yeah, yeah. I think especially when we first got started, the prospect of being able to sort of accumulate Bitcoin at a discount to the spot price was very, very intriguing. So, and then just naturally being here in Iowa, where there's a really good opportunity to do this business, things kind of just came together, naturally, I would say. So very optimistic and bullish long term about Bitcoin. Full on Bitcoin maxi, and we just saw a really good opportunity to set up this facility and be able to generate Bitcoin at a discount to spot.
Really interesting. A lot of people say when it comes to mining Bitcoin, they're like, oh, just buy Bitcoin directly. If you want to do something like do a BitX or something like that, some small solo mining, but that's not real mining. It is mining, but on such a small scale compared to that. Is it a good idea to, instead of mining Bitcoin, instead of buying Bitcoin, to mine Bitcoin long term? And is there like a framework to think about when does it make sense and when does it not make sense?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's a very common question that we get asked. So the answer that I have to that is I don't think it's one or the other. All right. So I think if there's a really good opportunity, a buy the dip moment, if you will, absolutely, buy that dip and stack the sats. However, I think that mining is a really interesting opportunity to sort of, it's a forced dollar cost average, right? We've done some analysis of some of our clients, and it's pretty interesting results that have shown that buying any asset, regardless of whether it's Bitcoin or a stock, is very emotional, right? And being able to remove the emotions from that decision-making process is really beneficial, I think, towards the long term. So you can think of the miners as like a forced DCA, while also having some significant tax advantages, being able to operate your mining company as a business, and the different benefits that provides. So I think it's a little bit of both. I think that on the emotional side, there's two sides of it. One, maybe you don't buy enough when prices are low, right? Or vice versa. When prices are higher, maybe we're not accumulating as much because the price seems really high now. When you and I both know over the long term, we should be accumulating this asset every single day. So I think it's a combination of both. But the mining provides some interesting forced DCA and different benefits.
Yeah, and I guess you have different ways to do that. I mean, with simple mining, you can set something up and basically let you do the setup work. And if you want to do it yourself, it's probably a lot of work, because those things can have some technical problems and do some electricity things, which might not be the best if you cannot handle that. How do you think about someone running their own miners and doing that work versus doing that with a service like you are doing?
Yeah, no, it's we've worked with a lot of different clients who have done their own miners at home, for example, and I think that's part of the benefits that we provide is we provide a really hands-off premium white glove service. So we're going to make it easy for anybody to mine Bitcoin. These particular machines are quite loud. They produce a lot of heat. The cost of electricity in the United States, average residential cost of electricity is about 16 cents per kilowatt hour. So, we're able to come in and provide all of these services as it relates to running the machines, maintaining them, doing the advanced micro soldering repairs, and operating this at a high level. We have the contracts with the utility companies to be able to go get that low cost of power, to be able to kind of offer an all-in-one solution. We have a dashboard where you can view all of your machines, so on and so forth, to just make it easy for anyone in the world to mine Bitcoin with us.
Super interesting. You said Bitcoin Maxi. I'm just curious. Did you ever look into mining anything else? Like, did you ever look into shitcoin mining?
Yeah, when we first got started, as we were just getting into it, we were mining Ethereum back in the day. That was a pretty short-lived situation. So yeah, since then our only focus has been on Bitcoin. So
interesting. What did you bring back to Bitcoin when you did Ethereum? What did you bring? What got you back to Bitcoin only?
I think that just in the beginning, when we first got started, the Ethereum mining at the time was, it was proof of work on Ethereum, and you could mine with GPUs. So it was a much quicker setup than setting up these particular ASIC machines. So it was more of just an ease to get into it, and that was in the very early stages. So it was a very short-lived period of time while we were mining with the GPUs in the back of our cell phone repair store.
That's super interesting. I'm always curious because it's with mining. We have with buying Bitcoin, most Bitcoiners have that phase where they buy Bitcoin, then they discover altcoins, then they go back to the Bitcoin only. So I was curious to see that with mining Bitcoin, it's similar. What do you think? And I had that in my mind when you talked about Bitcoin mining. What do you think Bitcoin mining will bring to the world outside of just securing money?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I think there's a really unique opportunity in the energy space, right? So if you look at just a really basic metric of, human prosperity across the world, quality of life is directly correlated with annual kilowatt hour consumption per capita, right? So the wealthiest, most prosperous, best places to live in the world all have the highest annual kilowatt hour consumption per capita. So I think if you just look naturally right now, the Bitcoin network is about 15 gigawatts of energy globally. And it's going to continue to grow over time. It's only going to consume more and more and more energy, which I think energy consumption can kind of have a negative connotation. However, we need more energy consumption. We need more energy production. That's only going to help improve quality of life across the world. So I think there's a really good opportunity for Bitcoin to help continue to build out more energy production that will enable just better quality of life. A unique way to think about this is, especially here in Iowa, we have a lot of renewable energy. Renewables are great. However, there's some downside to them too as well. The downside is if the sun isn't shining and the wind isn't blowing, the energy production still has to come from somewhere. We have a unique ability where we can, shut down our facilities, curtail or load shed to help balance out that supply and demand in times when the grid is getting out of balance. What Bitcoiners do is they're a buyer of electricity 24/7 while prices are low, obviously. And what that helps do is if there's more buyers of energy, it helps bring on more production of energy. So the more energy production that we can have, it just facilitates, more growth in other industries and being able to help keep that grid reliable for everybody.
That's super interesting. This notion of energy consumption is bad is so annoying because if we really go down that lane of every energy consumption is bad and we have to make it as efficient as possible, we basically come to the conclusion we have to kill ourselves.
Yeah.
Why do you think there's this notion that energy consumption equals bad?
Yeah, well, I think that agenda has been pushed, especially as it relates to, renewable energy and, consumption and those things. It definitely has a negative connotation associated with it. However, if you just purely look at the data, we can see that the more energy that we consume, the better off society is, right? And I want to continue trying to, spread that word because more energy consumption, more energy production is what everybody needs. Everybody there's a lot of people out there that like to, talk about, what energy should be used for what application, and this is a waste of energy. Why can't, Bitcoin just switch to proof of stake, so on and so forth. But at the same time, if there's no energy available to heat their home in the middle of winter, or to air condition their, home in the middle of summer when on a hot day, they're not going to care where the energy comes from, what the source of production is. They're just going to want access to that energy. And, Bitcoin will help enable a more robust system to be able to deliver that energy, over time.
Yeah, it's what I'm curious, what do you actually say? You probably get that a lot. What do you say to people that tell you, oh, like Bitcoin mining is so bad for the environment? Or is it slowly coming down that people don't say it anymore?
Yeah, the conversations are certainly getting a lot better, over the last couple of years. I think, again, just it's a lot about education. What we really try and do with Simple Mining is educate on all aspects of Bitcoin and mining. Everything from really, really basic information all the way to, the technical nitty gritty. So that conversation is, I think, just a misinterpretation of the reality of how, energy is being produced and used. Bitcoin miners are, if you look at the natural supply and demand, we're very incentivized to use very low cost of energy, which is going to be a situation where there's sufficient supply, right? If there's not sufficient supply or there's extremely high demand, Bitcoin miners are going to be the first to, shut down and give that energy back, basically. So it's just I think it's a misconception that Bitcoin miners are taking energy away from potential uses, when really Bitcoin miners are using excess energy, energy that would not have been consumed otherwise in most instances.
So in a way, Bitcoin mining is expanding the energy grid.
Yeah, absolutely. The more consumption that Bitcoin miners can use over time, that's just going to lead to a more robust system where you could have more energy production and more, especially as it relates to a system that is reliant upon renewables and the intermittency of available supply. The more production you can bring on, especially as it relates to base load or even more renewables, it just helps be able to deliver power at all times. Even if you have twice as many windmills, and even if the wind is low, you're still going to have more production overall, even if the wind speed is low at that point in time. So now there's some nuances, some details there, but Bitcoin miners being able to buy all of that excess energy 24/7. And if you talk about, a system globally that is 15 gigawatts currently, and as that continues to scale to 20, 25, 40, 50 gigawatts, that's a lot of energy, where Bitcoin miners are going to go out and try and find that low cost of energy. And it's a great pair.
It's interesting. One thing with Bitcoin, did you ever thought about also doing AI data centers? Because it's so so popular right now with AI. Is that something that you have looked into?
Yeah. So I have a few thoughts on AI. AI has certainly been the hype for the last couple of months, and I think it's no doubt that AI is going to be very, very impactful, very deflationary as it relates to providing different services to society. However, I think that the industry as a whole, and maybe the business case behind building and operating AI data centers, is still really, really early. And you have a lot of very, very large companies that have significant, the Mag 7 companies, for example, that have very large balance sheets, and they're willing to throw billions of dollars at the wall just to see what sticks. And I think if you look currently at the investment that's being made versus the future expected revenues on that investment, there's not a great business case at this point in time. I think over the course of the next 3, 5, and certainly 10 years, you'll see that evolve, in really a good business case will probably present itself. But currently, we are not looking into any of the AI data centers. I think there's some really large companies that are working there, but my concern would be in the short to medium term viability of those businesses based upon the investment and then the expected revenue to support those investments.
Interesting. Why do you think? What does AI like? Why is that like that with AI not being as profitable?
Yeah, I think that certainly it's a long game, right? You could have could look at a company like Amazon that was losing money for many years, and obviously it's worked out great for them. But in the case of AI right now, it's certainly the long term play that they will be able to figure out this business model over time, right? For example, OpenAI has a really unique product, ChatGPT. I use it on almost a daily basis currently, and they lost, I think somewhere in the range of $5 billion last year. And I think that they have a total investment in that company of about $20 billion with, very little, reoccurring revenue to show for that investment. So certainly it's on the long-term play, but as you have more and more of these competitors, enter the space with something related to AI, I'm of the opinion that it's kind of a race to zero as to who can offer what services and whatnot. You'll have some specialties in this and that, but if you look, for example, at like a Google search, for example, a Google search has practically a real world cost of zero in order to do that, to do that search. While it's significantly more currently for AI, and it will inevitably be a little bit more over time for AI, just with the compute involved. I think it's safe to say that it's hard to forecast where some of these companies could potentially have some significant revenues to support their current investment.
Bitcoin mining basically has to always stay on the profitable side, otherwise Bitcoin miners will shut down, and then the difficulty will come down. Basically, it's a forced profit that's baked into their code.
Right, exactly. Bitcoin miners, the machines are constantly getting, more efficient over time. Although we're starting to see maybe some diminishing returns on how much better the new equipment is actually getting. But yeah, you're certainly right that machines it's a very simple function. You have your input cost of electricity, and you have the network difficulty and the price of Bitcoin, and then the only other variable would be the block reward, which changes approximately every 4 years. And those are very easy inputs to be able to calculate, and there's your business model there.
Super interesting. Just on a quick note, only because I put that tweet out, I think yesterday, and it got like, for some reason, over 50,000 views, and people were discussing really, really heavily on that. I just put out the thesis that I think hash rate leads price, and I wasn't aware how many different opinions and how controversial that take is, because it was not a big take of mine. How do you look at the correlation between the Bitcoin price and hash rate and that?
Yeah, I would agree with that, 100%. I think if you look at the hash rate is the signal through the noise, if you will, in the world, because you can see all of the investment that is being made. And, especially at this point in time, it's a significant investment. We're approaching, 800, 900 exahash globally. And the additional, investment to be able to bring on, 1% or 2% of the total overall hash rate is a significant, amount of capital. So I think it's a really good way to see, like I said, the signal through the noise, if you will. And I would agree that hash rate would kind of lead price, because you're seeing the businesses prepare for the future and investing in these sites and the equipment, preparing for that future price appreciation of Bitcoin.
How is it actually impacting the business when the Bitcoin price moves up or down? Like how much more profitable does a miner get if the Bitcoin price now goes up? I think today, this will come out almost a month later, but today is I think 6 or 7% uptick day. Yeah. And some days there's maybe like a down day. Do you see the same cycles with the price that impacts the business, or is that not that important?
Yeah, well, as it relates to the profitability of mining, certainly when you're mining with us, you have a fixed input on a daily basis, which is your cost of electricity, right? So you have a fixed cost right now. Most of the machines are, call it about $6 a day in fixed cost for each machine to operate. Certainly, if the price of Bitcoin were to double tomorrow, the revenue that you're going to be producing is going to be, twice as much, essentially, while still maintaining that fixed cost of electricity. So the interesting side of mining is where you can actually see, if you were to compare, buying versus mining, today you're able to produce Bitcoin at a discount to spot. And if you were to look at buying Bitcoin today, say you were to buy $10 worth of Bitcoin today on an exchange, that's going to get you $10 today in Bitcoin. And then if the price doubles, that same $10 is now only going to buy you $5 equivalent of the same amount of Bitcoin. Versus if you're mining, you have your fixed cost to operate the machine on a daily basis. And let's say that you're generating, $12 a day in revenue for that particular machine. All of a sudden, if price doubles, your fixed cost is still $6, but now you're getting $24 of revenue versus 12. So, certainly nobody can predict price and nobody can predict hash rate. I'm of the opinion I'm very long-term optimistic on Bitcoin. That's just kind of the differences there between mining and buying spot.
So it's almost better for mining Bitcoin if the price runs up, and if the price goes down, it's better for those who buy Bitcoin. Is that a fair assumption?
Yeah, I think if you look just, generally speaking, timing, of course, plays an important role if you're buying, any asset, right? Whether that be spot Bitcoin, whether that be, Bitcoin mining machines, whether that be, gold or Apple stock, whatever it might be. So I think, kind of related back to our earlier point is that forced dollar cost average, that those machines are going to be producing Bitcoin for you every single day, no matter what the price is something that we've seen to be really beneficial.
Let's take a break for a moment and appreciate the beauty that Coin Vigilante has made with the Bitcoin watches. Those watches are the most amazing, the most elegant way of showing that you are a true Bitcoiner. And Coin Vigilante just dropped a completely new and amazing Genesis edition of their watch collections. You have the date of the first ever mined Bitcoin block in there, and of course also the block height and which epoch we are currently in. I love the level of detail they put in this masterpiece. Make sure to check out those amazing Coin Vigilante timepieces down in the descriptions. I love those watches so much. And now if you have Bitcoin, I really do hope that you don't have it on exchange. But if you do have it on exchange, I have two ways for you to deal with that. The first way is you put it on a hardware wallet. That's the entry for you to get into the self-custody game. I recommend BitBox, Bitcoin only edition for that. It's a super simple and secure way. And if you check out the link in the description, you even get 5% off if you use the code Robin. And the second way is the Bitcoin Way. The Bitcoin Way is your all-in partner in terms of how to get the most out of your sovereignty. They will personalize for you a self-custody setup that is perfect for your individual situation. They will show you how you can secure your own devices. Securing your Bitcoin is not enough. You also have to keep all your devices secure. One topic that is overlooked often is the inheritance plan. What happens with your Bitcoin once you are no longer here? Do you have a plan for that in place already? And last but not least, if you're in the jurisdictions where you don't feel safe, it's better to get a plan B. For all that, head over to thebitcoinway.com/Robin to get a 30-minute free call. And just a quick side note, I will be for the first time ever speaking at the Bitcoin Prague event in June. It will be absolutely legendary and I'm really looking forward to seeing all of you there. You can get your ticket in the link down in the description of Bitcoin Bitcoin Prague. And very important, use code Robin to get 10% off your ticket. I'm really looking forward seeing you there. Yeah, it's something that I've seen with with my business. I'm not doing Bitcoin mining. I'm just doing the podcast. So there's income coming in fiat, income coming in at Bitcoin, and there's expenses coming out in Bitcoin and expenses coming out in fiat. And right now, since the last couple of months, I have this really nice split for some reason where I don't have to exchange one for the other. I can pay my fiat bills with fiat and pay my Bitcoin bills with Bitcoin, which is awesome that currently it's working out like that, which really detached me from the Bitcoin price at a certain, because I'm no longer looking for buying Bitcoin. I'm no longer looking for selling Bitcoin. I'm just getting paid. And this is just like, it's like this. It's pre-agreed. I cannot change that. And I pay it. It's also pre-agreed and I cannot really change that. Yeah, maybe like 5 days more or less, but doesn't really change a lot. So this getting away from the Bitcoin price and detaching yourself emotionally, no matter if you do it with mining or disabling or like whatever your strategy is, there's a real value in there. Also the peace of mind of that, all of a sudden not being emotionally emotionally attached on the Bitcoin price. If it's like 95K tomorrow or 85K, like who cares?
Right, exactly. And that's, just goes to show if you can remove the emotions and just, let Bitcoin do its thing. It's pretty amazing to see, to see how those returns work. So.
Absolutely. How do you see the future of mining? Maybe let's put it that way. We have seen an evolution of mining really rapidly. Where in the beginning you can just mine with a computer like 50 bitcoins a day. Now you need a whole operation to get to 50 bitcoin per day. It's no longer possible with a MacBook or something like that. So with that, and we have now like big companies, publicly traded companies, like we have really a whole big industry on its own that is mining Bitcoin. How do you see that evolving over the next 5-10 years? Maybe also with the aspect of solo mining that we talked in the beginning a little bit with BitX.
Yeah. So, I think especially as it relates to like the public companies, you were seeing a lot of these public companies shift and kind of, start to slow down maybe their expansion as it relates to Bitcoin mining. Riot, for example, has a 1 gigawatt facility that they completed about 40% of. That was supposed to be, all 1 gigawatt was supposed to be for Bitcoin mining. And now they're looking for a hyperscaler, AI to come in and take the remaining 600 megawatts. So I think that, currently with the demand for AI, especially as it relates to the public companies, Core Scientific obviously is completely transitioning to AI. They have some large contracts with CoreWeave. That naturally is going to reduce buyers in the market at a very large scale, and I think potentially be a benefit to some of the smaller operators and the private companies that are operating in this space. So I see obviously the Bitcoin network is going to still continue to grow, but as you're seeing some of these larger companies step away and pivot to AI, I think it's going to there's a lot of conversation out there about hash rate growth will kind of continue to same maybe as like the expected average compounded growth of Bitcoin is expected to kind of slowly diminish over time. You would kind of expect the same as it relates to hash rate growth, and that's what we've seen. So I think it'll be a good opportunity for the long term for some private miners and companies who can operate efficiently, and I think there's a very long term business here. I think Bitcoin is going to continue to grow in market cap as it relates to all the other assets in the world out there, and this will be great commodity to produce over the long term.
Absolutely. And I want to get later a little bit on your case for Bitcoin, why are you bullish on stuff like that. But it's really interesting to talk about AI and Bitcoin mining. I never thought, because you say like the AI is kind of buying up some demand with that. The bigger ones are sometimes doing AI and Bitcoin mining. This allows the smaller ones to come up in a way. I mean, maybe that's an unfair assumption, but I will just put it out there. In a way, AI is decentralizing the Bitcoin mining network more.
That's a great way to look at it.
Interesting. Yeah, I love that. Yeah. So now to the question of what's your thesis behind Bitcoin? Why are you bullish on Bitcoin? Like, why are you big on Bitcoin? Obviously, when you're mining Bitcoin.
Yeah. Well, I think, I like to take the really, really base assumption that markets move to what works most efficient, right? And if you look at the, society as a whole globally, and we zoom out, on a very, very large time frame, gold has been society's, store of value asset for thousands of years. And it's been that way because of the properties that it has, right? It's durable, it's portable, it's divisible, so on and so forth. All the same properties that Bitcoin has. However, if you look, Bitcoin is a digital form of gold, along with some other additional properties, such as the network and whatnot, that make it a much better alternative than gold. And if we look, over a really, really large time scale, we're still in the, very first inning. The first pitch hasn't even been thrown yet as it relates to the digital world, right? And I think over time, it's just it's a very good, at least my opinion is, it's very clear that things are moving to a more digital world. And this particular, asset that has a lot of unique properties that the world has never seen before, is only going to grow in market share, and it only makes sense to be traded as a global currency that people can save their the fruits of their labor in this asset that will actually maintain its purchasing power. And really, you look at a world that's everything divided by 21 million, essentially.
Yeah, it's the Bitcoin will become the base layer of everything, and will then be the one asset everything is compared towards. That future is so exciting. There's so many changes coming with that, and maybe. How old are you? You seem pretty young still, even though you have done a lot of companies.
Yeah, I'm 28, so I'll be 29 in August.
How has Bitcoin kind of impacted your life and how you run your business?
Yeah, well, I think, especially when I started in business, when I first started in business in the cell phone repair stores, what was drilled into my brain ever since I was very young was you need to save money, right? You need to save money to be able to, buy a house and do all these other sorts of things that you want to do in life. You have to save your money. And I think, at the base, it's a very, very good approach. However, when you start to get into the weeds of things and you realize, well, saving money, you're actually, having this hidden tax every single day of inflation, right? And in the base fiat currency is, your purchasing power is being inflated away. That's something that it takes some time to understand and really experience that. So, as we were growing our cell phone repair business, we were saving, and then we would save that cash and we would reinvest it. But really, we should have been saving in a hard asset, right? We should have been saving in Bitcoin. And, that would have, the fruits of our labor would have been, our purchasing power and our labor would have been protected over time. And so I think that's first and foremost, that's the first thing that Bitcoin did, was really help to understand, how the system works and how broken the fiat system is. And really just puts you in a position to, think more long term and have a really good, really good financial responsibility, I'd say.
Did you save before with your cell phone repair shop? Did you save in US dollar or stocks or something else before Bitcoin?
Yep, just US dollars in the bank account. And looking back, that's not the proper way to do it. But and there's always obviously risk in these things and volatility, so on and so forth. But, generally speaking, if you're just putting your money in your bank account, it's getting inflated away every single day. You're losing purchasing power. So there's a reason that, hardly anybody keeps their cash in the bank. They take the cash and they get it out as quickly as they possibly can. That's why you see the stocks with crazy valuations and so on and so forth, is everybody's looking for what's the best alternative to holding this asset that's losing purchasing power every single day.
And now, obviously, you save with simple mining in Bitcoin, I guess.
Yeah, we operate on a Bitcoin standard.
But what does it? You still have a bank account, I guess, to pay electricity, or you are fortunate to pay in Bitcoin?
So hopefully someday, we'll be able to exchange and pay our, utility companies in directly in Bitcoin. But no, we still have to, transact a decent portion in fiat. However, we do accept payments in Bitcoin. So, we try to, everything that we look at is through the lens of Bitcoin, right? Even though we might be paying out fiat for some expenses, it all, inevitably gets denominated on our side in Bitcoin, where, we fully operate on a Bitcoin standard, and that's our ultimate goal. So.
Interesting. I'm so interested in businesses and intersection with business and Bitcoin. Because if you're a business and you're totally just on US dollar, you are really incentivized to find some new kind of thing that you put your money into, which can be good and bad, depending on if you are able to find really great opportunities. With Bitcoin mining, you found something good. And if you have Bitcoin as your default savings vehicle, this is pretty rapidly adopting, and this is then also pretty rapidly growing. Then you really have to think, do I keep the savings now in Bitcoin, or do I build a new site, or right. How do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it forces you to really look at things through the lens of from a financially responsible position. And do we make this investment, or do we just continue to hold Bitcoin, right? So, and I think it's a combination of both. We want to certainly continue to build out our Bitcoin treasury, if you will. While also expanding and growing our business too. So, and that's kind of, as it relates to Bitcoin mining, you can look at the advantages of Bitcoin mining. So, if you have a business and you have, taxes due, you could look at this as a potential way to reduce your tax liability, right? And then you can also operate this as a business, produce Bitcoin as an asset. You can deduct the expenses and then continue to grow your Bitcoin stack, for example. So.
Yeah, the tax strategies around Bitcoin mining, that might be also an interesting thing, because I think it doesn't get talked enough about, especially with young entrepreneurs. Maybe they have some, I guess even for my podcasting business, if there's profit coming up, it would be only logical to find something for that to reinvest it, and Bitcoin mining might be something interesting to look at. How many of your clients is taxes a reason for doing Bitcoin mining?
Oh yeah, certainly not all of them, but it's a big. We have a lot of business owners that are clients. We work with a lot of large private and public companies that are doing this as a business. So the tax advantages can be good. I'm not a CPA. Certainly recommend everybody talk to their own tax professional and whatnot, but. There's certainly some tax advantages in this business.
Super interesting. I just love that topic too much. It's really cool. How do you think Bitcoin will impact our world outside of energy and Bitcoin mining that we talked about? How do you think Bitcoin will impact how we live together?
Yeah, well, we kind of live in our own little echo chamber where, we see a lot of these things and we see the game theory play out over time, certainly the last few years where, when we started the company, our bank account got shut down when we first started. And now you're starting to see, Bitcoin held by state pension funds and governments acquiring Bitcoin, governments mining Bitcoin, so on and so forth. I think you just naturally speaking, there's a lot of additional benefits that will, it's kind of, fix the money, fix the world, right, is a common phrase. So if you don't have broken money and you don't have all of those other sorts of things, the world, while not perfect, it starts to look like a lot better place for sure.
It kind of fixes the incentives and makes it better to take better decisions. It's also from a business perspective, but also from a personal perspective. All of a sudden, it gives you back the capabilities to think clearly, because you're not rushed into anything. If we look back and just having the savings as US dollar, you're almost kind of rushed into let's get something new. If you have Bitcoin, you're like, okay, let's step back. Bitcoin is already really good. Before we jump on and make a new venture, let's think really clearly about, is that new venture really worth it or not?
Yeah, I think you could even relate this, from a really simple perspective. If you related it to like the Treasury, for example, Treasury is really easy for them to issue new debt. They can print the currency itself to repay that back to, debt back over time. If they were to issue debt in Bitcoin, denominated Bitcoin, that immediately changes, the decision-making process. Because if the U.S. government were to issue debt for 100,000 Bitcoin and they had to pay that 100,000 Bitcoin back in Bitcoin over time, I think they would very quickly change their decision-making on what they're spending money on. And that I think that forced financial responsibility that Bitcoin naturally causes you to do is a really good benefit, whether it's on an individual basis, whether it's on a business level, or even the government.
Interesting. How do you think it will impact governments? Or thesis, and I don't know if you even have that thesis, because there are different, there are two types of Bitcoiners. Those who think that central banks will always be like, there will always be some government token or some fiat currencies. Those who don't. Let's go first in that. Otherwise, the second question doesn't make sense. Do you think there will always be fiat, or is there a chance, even like 100 years down the road, that we get rid of that fiat currency?
Yeah, I think it's going to take. I think it's going to take some time, but I do eventually think that Bitcoin will be the global reserve currency. It's not going to be a straight, nice, easy road. It's going to be a bumpy road, lots of curves, so on and so forth. But I think just naturally that is the progression of where this is all going, right? And that will be a really good situation. And will there still be some governments that will try and, this and that? It might not be 100% of the world that will be perfect, but it's kind of the game theory of anybody who is trying to do that is going to get left behind, right? And certainly I think that there's a natural progression that this should take a little bit of time to play out. Because if it happens tomorrow, if the world is on a Bitcoin global reserve currency status as of 2026, the situation is probably not looking very good in the world. I think that this is going to take a long time to play out, and if it happens rapidly, that probably means bad things are happening in the world, right?
Absolutely. I'm always bringing the Titanic example up. You don't want the Titanic to sink like extremely fast. You want the savings boats and the lifeboats coming and bring the people into safety. So fiat being the Titanic, and the safety and the land next to it being Bitcoin. So I think we always say like the Omega candle and all of those things, but we also have to think about the implications, what it means if Bitcoin actually shoots up. Let's say we have now, let's say Bitcoin shoots up in May or June this year to $1 million. What are the implications of that? Because the network didn't grow that quickly. Probably not. So probably means the US dollar or the fiat currencies really got devalued. And then your family and your loved ones also are hurting, because they might not have all a Bitcoin standard like you do.
Right. It's a little bit of a scary thought to think about. If Bitcoin is $1 million, a few months from now, it probably means a lot is wrong with the world. The underlying fiat currency has completely collapsed. The $1 trillion Zimbabwe, paper bill, and it's a bad situation. So I think this is going to play out over a very long period of time. Now, whether that's 50 or 100 years, it's anybody's best guess at that point in time. But I do think that this is going to be a very slow, gradual transition, which is probably the best way for it to happen. Certainly you'd like to see it a little bit sooner rather than later. Just United States, for example, $37 trillion in debt. That debt is going to be continued to be inflated away forever. And, it's just a better situation if you're operating, in a fiscally responsible situation, managing your balance sheet and, how much debt you're taking on and so on and so forth.
Absolutely, 100%. And now if we are in this future where there aren't any central banks being far, far away from each other, from us, but like we are in that future, how do you think governments organize themselves, or we organize ourselves without the ability to print money?
Yeah, well, I think the government kind of operates like a business at that point in time. It really evaluates all of the options. What does it have coming in for revenue? Who likes paying taxes, obviously, but I personally at least like the fire department and the police department and good roads to drive on, so on and so forth. So you're going to have some revenue coming in, and you're going to have some expenses, and then you're going to have opportunities to invest. And I think that forces intelligent investment in the country, right? It's in my opinion, it's just like a business at that point.
That's it's like it brings back government as a service, basically. It's a weird term, but it's like that's what it's supposed to be.
Yep.
It is going to be again, and not that big overhead that controls all the aspects of your life. No, it's like actually there to serve, there to protect the borders, there to make a safety net for those who really can't, and then have like fire department and all those things. Yeah, I'm a big fan of that, and I don't think we need to have so much taxes and so many money printing for that. We can probably do it way more efficient.
Right. No, exactly. And that's kind of the, I'm a big believer in the free market will do its thing. And, when the government is intervening with the free market and printing the currency and making, malinvestments, it's not a long-term good situation, right? It's a bad investment.
Absolutely. I ask each and every one of my guests the same question. And the question is, what can we learn from you besides Bitcoin?
We learn from me besides Bitcoin. It's a good question. I would say that, as it relates to simple mining, we're just trying to, offer a really great customer experience. We're trying to be the best provider in the world for this type of business. And we have a lot of educational content on our business that isn't necessarily specifically related to Bitcoin. Some of it has to do with energy and the grid and how, renewable energy and these sorts of things work. So I'd say that'd be one resource that we could be if you're interested in learning more about energy, the grid, and, what is this AI thing and how does it even work and how are the data centers different and so on and so forth. That would we could be a good resource there.
Really, really cool. We have an end routine in the podcast where the previous guest is asking a question for the next guest without knowing who the next guest actually is. And this is an interesting one because the previous guest asked you the question: is Bitcoin a form of consciousness?
Is Bitcoin a form of consciousness? That's a good question. Well, I would say almost yes. It's kind of like gold at that point in time. Like, why is society chose this shiny yellow rock to be our currency? There's, there would be plenty of alternatives. It's kind of, that was the selection based upon the properties that it had, and it just kind of naturally happened over time. So it's a good question. I've never been asked that one, but I'd have to say in a roundabout way, yes.
Yeah, that's why I love the end routine, because there are questions coming in that I might not even have thought of. I've never asked that question before any guest.
Yeah.
And it's definitely something might not be suitable or might be suitable for the next guest. Really cool. Thank you so much, Adam. Before I let you go, where can people find you, ask you questions, and reach out to you?
Yeah, you can find us on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn, Adam Haynes. Our company, Simple Mining, is on LinkedIn. You can find us on YouTube, Twitter, so on and so forth. We're always posting educational content and trying to, inform about Bitcoin mining, and energy, and all those sorts of things.
Really cool. Thank you so much, Adam, for being on. Also, thank you so much for everyone that is watching and listening for joining us today. As always, I'll be back tomorrow with another episode. Bye-bye.